Charleston City Council is meeting tonight to discuss a plethora of issues, including whether or not to extend its mask ordinance. I talk one-on-one with Councilman Harry Griffin for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Councilman Harry Griffin, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks for having me, Quintin.
You're very welcome. Let me just jump right into it. Obviously, the city of Charleston City Council will be taking up, obviously, the mask ordinance and whether to extend it tonight. You said this on Facebook recently. You said this, quote, "I do not agree with the city of Charleston's interpretation of this executive order, and I plan to ask for it to be addressed at our city council meeting on Tuesday night, meeting tonight." What different set of standards does the city want to apply in your mind?
Well, let's just look at that executive order for just a second. I'm just going to run through a couple of things. Number one, and a lot of people have pointed this out, on the very last page of the executive order, it states that any local ordinance that contradicts the governor's executive order will supersede the local ordinance. However, there's also a subsection in there that states that local government can have a mask ordinance. However, it stipulates as to what that ordinance should look like. And it says that it should be very narrowly tailored. It says that it should be as least restrictive as possible. And it says that it should be backed up by data and should really only be used whenever social distancing measures are not able to be obtained. So if you look at our ordinance in Charleston, it is the most restrictive in the entire state. And if you look at the DHEC numbers, I don't think you have the data there to justify having such a strict mask ordinance.
I'll get back to that in just a second, but doesn't the governor seems to contradict himself in this executive order, because he proclaims that his order supersedes local ordinances and then also proclaims the local authorities are allowed to create ordinances in contradiction to the governor's. So what's your interpretation of his order?
I think that clause down there at the very end that talks about the superseding, I believe that is a subsection that's put in just about every executive order. It just basically is put in there to make sure that local governments don't try to supersede his authority. I think the crux of what's important is that subsection G on page 8, I believe, that talks about local government can have a mask ordinance, but it's got to be very narrowly tailored, and ours is not. Ours is so restrictive, so broad-based. It is, I've seen just in the last couple of days, for example, Lexington, the town of Lexington, they rolled back their mask ordinance. Because at the end of the day, Quintin, the worst thing that we can do is confuse our citizens and our tourists that are going to be coming to Charleston. There's a governor that's saying we need to open things back up, and then you have a city that may or may not tonight decide whether to be much more restrictive.
Let me ask you this then. How exactly does the city of Charleston narrowly tailor its ordinance?
I think the easiest way to do it would be to get in compliance with the governor's order and give the people, the businesses, the business owners, and the staff and the people that live in the municipalities the authority to do what's best for them and their families instead of telling them what they have to do.
Now, let me ask you a redundant question, Mr. Councilman. What data is the city currently looking at to make its ordinance less restrictive?
We have never discussed easing restrictions. We've been in this pandemic for a year. Tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary, I believe. We have never had an in-depth discussion about removing restrictions.
Let me ask you this. Speaking of which, how many people have been given tickets here in the city of Charleston solely for medical conditions?
Way too many. From last count, I believe it was over 700 citations have been written in the city, and we've got to do something about that because, last year we had some civil discourse and we had some really negative events that happened. But for the nonviolent offenders, we gave them a second chance. We dropped the charges and we moved forward. Now we've got people that have had a lot of misunderstandings with this mask ordinance that have been given citations, And our livability court hasn't been meeting regularly due to the fact that the city has not been open to the public in a lot of ways. City offices have not been open to the public. And so we've had people that have had some mass tickets and have waited on jury trials for a long time. Let's save these people some court costs. Let's give them the same opportunity that we've given others, and let's drop some mass ticket charges.
By asking residents and tourists for proof of medical exemption, is that legal?
I have no idea. I would say that if I was a livability officer, there's no way that I would be going up to somebody and asking them to prove to me their medical exemption. And I believe that by us writing them a ticket and making them go to court to prove it, that's not fair. You know, just last year, like I said, we gave a lot of people a second chance, and we gave a lot of people an opportunity. We didn't want to ruin their lives. That was the reasoning I got. We don't want to ruin people's lives. Well, we need to take that same advice this year.
What is your reasoning for this mask mandate?
I think that the mask mandate, I think that there's some data that suggests that wearing a mask is helpful. I think there's also data out there that says that wearing a mask is not necessary in a lot of ways. I don't know why we've ever had it in place that you have to wear a mask while you're walking your pets outside in the open when you're not even around people. It makes no sense. I look at how we go about our business with the masks in restaurants and bars. We just make people wear them when they wait in line and when they walk in the door. As soon as they walk in the door, they can take them off and they don't have to wear them again. So what are we really doing it because there's science behind it, or are we doing it because it makes people feel better about themselves?
Do you believe this is all about control?
I think that people expect government to have some sort of control, but I think there's a fine line between what's necessary. Sorry, buddy, that was pretty loud, wasn't it? Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I think there's a fine line between what's necessary and what's excessive. And we have to make sure that we don't get into that excessive category. We've had these ordinances for a year. That's much long enough. It's time to take the training wheels off and let our people police themselves again.
Let me ask you this on a different subject. How much money from these fines have actually gone back into the city's general fund?
It's really hard to tell because there's so many different fees that have to be paid. The state gets some, court costs. I would say it's a minimal gain from the city. But let's just say, for example, if there was 700 citations and each was $100, that would be $70,000. I think that the gain would be very minimal. I don't think this is a money-making technique, but I do think that we need to rein it in a little bit. And I'm all for ending the fines altogether. I think they were excessive to start with. I think taking away the warnings was a bad thing to do, and I want to see us start rolling back these restrictions and especially these fines immediately.
Now, obviously, we had a conversation obviously last summer about the mask mandate, and obviously there were some amendments to the original ordinance. If you could go back now to those particular ordinances, which one would you pick and ask the city to actually choose?
Well, I voted against every single one of them, so you know the answer for me. It's none. We should have stayed, in my opinion, we should have let our people police ourselves. On the state level, they never put a mask mandate in place other than bars and restaurants. They did that, which I can understand. You have a lot of people in a small space, but to tell people that they had to wear one in cases that just don't make sense at all. Like, for example, gave you an example. Why would somebody who's outside walking their dog completely alone, nobody else around them, why do they need to have a mask? What is that mask actually doing to serve or protect anybody?
And let me ask you this, Mr. Councilman. How many lawsuits are actually sitting on the city attorney's desk as we talk right now?
I wish I knew the answer, but I might ask that tonight because you're not the first person to ask me that recently. I would like to know that answer, so I'll get that information for you and get it back to you.
And how many mass citations has the city prosecuted dismissed from July 2020 to right now in March?
The last number I saw is that over 700 were written. I don't know how many are prosecuted because, like I said, our livability court has not been open the whole time.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Councilman. What circumstances would have to happen for the mayor to remove all the COVID-19 emergency measures, including this mass ordinance?
I can't speak for the mayor. All I can tell you is I've never felt like he has any intention of removing any of these restrictions.
Do we know how many people in the city of Charleston have been actually vaccinated thus far?
I don't have an exact number, but I do know that our city has vaccination facilities open all over. We're using city buildings to vaccinate. And I'll give you a little tidbit. We actually have incentivized every city employee that gets vaccinated to get a $50 bill. So we are doing everything we can to have our city staff vaccinated.
What actual requirements and rules does the mayor think, feel, or even believe must be perpetual going forward?
I have no idea. This is an example of we have never really gone into depth about how we were going to move forward. It was almost like we never thought we'd get to this moment in a lot of ways, but I always knew we would. And a lot of other council members did too, but we haven't really done a lot of planning about how we move forward and start easing up the restrictions. So hopefully we're going to have that conversation tonight.
Now, you talk about, obviously, a lot of other council members who believe what you believe from the beginning to now. What will be the votes tonight?
I have no idea. I've been on the losing side of a 12-1 vote every single time. So if any other council members join me, I will be appreciative. Now, let me just say this.
Yes, sir.
Part of the reason why I vote no every time is because, number one, we should be meeting in person. We're the only municipality down here that's not meeting in person. Number two, we should have been looking at ways of easing restrictions on businesses, especially since they've been hit significantly hard due to COVID and social unrest. So we should have been looking for ways to incentivize business, and we have not really ever done a good job of that. And number three, we continue to package all of these emergency ordinances into one big emergency ordinance. And what that does is it gives the mayor power that I don't think he deserves. And it ties in some really good emergency ordinances, such as suspending business license fees and suspending parking requirements, and ties that in with meeting in person or not having a gathering of 10 people or less. 10 people or more, excuse me. So why would you have all of these different ordinances that are technically deemed emergency ordinances? They all serve a different purpose. They're all packaged into one big package. So obviously I have to vote no, because there's no reason why we shouldn't be meeting in person. And there's really no reason why we should continue to give the mayor more power than what our local ordinances already give him. We can't afford to give him any more power than he already has.
Now, what particular emergency powers should be repealed for the mayor?
Well, just this whole concept that we take a vote every 60 days and put these emergency ordinances in place, and then he's basically left to take care of the city really without a lot of oversight. 60 days is a long time. Think about how far we've come in 60 days. 60 days ago, we were just really had very, very few people vaccinated. And just in the last 2 months, we've gotten, I think the latest number is, I think almost 1/3 of our state has become vaccinated. So we've had significant increases in vaccinations. And 2 months from now, over 50, maybe 60% of the state will be vaccinated. So why would we basically suspend the rule of council in terms of meeting in person? Why would we suspend that for 2 more months? We have very important work that needs to be done. And if we're going to delay a reopening schedule, it needs to be for a very short amount of time, not 2 months.
And what exactly is the oversight of the city right now, as you know it?
I think the city has way more control than it should. And I think we need to give the power back to the people. I think at the end of the day, we should all trust our constituents. Even if we lift the mask mandate, many Charlestonians are still going to wear a mask. Many businesses are still going to require their employees and their patrons to wear masks. And we got to give the right back to the people to choose, not be told that they have to do it. because I don't feel comfortable telling somebody what they should do, what's right for them and their family. You know, we have some very, very amazing people in the city, and we got to start giving them the credit they deserve.
Now, what logical incentives would you give to businesses here on behind me, right here on King Street, right now, if you could?
To be honest with you, I would go full blast. I would go. I would ask every business on King Street to please practice social distancing. Please have your employees wear a mask. But you're a business owner that has been hit hard. I haven't done it. We as a council haven't done the best job always of prioritizing you. We had to wait on the governor a little bit with the 11 p.m. last call. But now that the governor has released these restrictions, we as a city should follow suit to give these businesses an opportunity to try to make up for what they've lost. Because in the meantime, you've seen it, businesses are closing every week and not reopening.
Now, Mr. Councilman, let me ask you one more time. What exact incentives would you give to the King Street business owners down here?
Like I said, I would go full blast, let them open back up.
Full blast how?
I would go back to the pre-pandemic openings. I would allow them to operate the way they did before the pandemic.
Or how much money would the city actually give to these businesses as far as incentives?
I mean, we don't really have any. I mean, we can't really give them anything right now. I mean, we're in financial strife right now. You know, we don't have money to give out to businesses. But you know, I know we talked about doing a small business loan.
Right.
Maybe that's where you're going with that. I'm sorry if I'm a little confused by the question, but you know, I think we should still look at doing a small business loan. We should still look at finding ways to help these small businesses out. But at the time that we talked about it last time, I think it was only $10,000 or $20,000, and that's not going to go very far. I think the best thing we can do is remove the restrictions that have been in place and allow people to come back in. And people being inside, spending money, that's going to be what incentivizes the businesses.
Now, and I'll get back to that in just a second, but you also said that there's work to be done here in the city. What exactly do you want to do for your district, District 10?
Well, we still have significant flooding issues, and we're working on a project in District 10 that's going to take 4 of the properties that were bought out by the FEMA grants and retrofitting them and hopefully turning them back into green space. We're also working on we've got a NIFWIF, National Wildlife grant. And that's going to create significant amounts of storage within the basin. So we're doing great projects over there. And then ultimately, I want to continue to draw commercial development to our area. We're very lucky that we've got a great Harris Teeter shopping center that's thriving. It's doing great. We've got to bring more commercial development, smart development to that area because, as you know, we have a Church Creek TIF district over there. And that TIF is dedicated strictly to drainage projects within the Church Creek Basin. So all the commercial development that we can bring to that area is going to create money that we can use in that TIF to help with flooding.
What's your plan and what incentives do you want the developers to bring into that district?
Well, there are developers that have, number one, we've got to get some infrastructure over there, man. We need it bad. We're going to get a big help with the widening of Glen McConnell. That's going to be coming here very shortly. But, you know, we look at a project like Long Savannah. It's been on the books for a long time, still in the development phase. That project would create its own schools, its own police station, its own fire station, its own grocery stores. You see how the Harris Teeter, it's right on the West Ashley Circle, and you can actually drive through Shadow Moss and Grand Oaks and get to it. Eventually, there's an idea for a nice shopping center up near Village Green. So there's a lot of opportunity there to get commercial development there, and it's interconnectivity.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to drive your car to get there. You don't have to go far away. You can ride your bike. You can walk. You can ride your golf cart. You don't have to drive out on the highway, and that is going to make that development so crucial to our area because we just don't have a lot of infrastructure out there, and there's not a lot of room for it.
And where's going to be the room for, obviously, for storage for the wildlife?
Well, that is another good concept in Long Savannah, is that it's got thousands of acres of park. We have got to protect our wildlife out there, and I talk about it all the time about not filling in wetlands. That's important. I drive out in my neighborhoods all the time. I see deer roaming the streets, and it scares me a little bit because it's dangerous. But you've heard that expression: "You pave paradise to put up a parking lot." The old song. I worry about us growing too fast, too quickly, not doing enough infrastructure, and not protecting our wildlife. So we've got to incentivize these developers to say, "Hey, look, we want you to come here. We want you to build good commercial developments. We don't mind you building some residential, but you need to protect and preserve our wildlife as well." And I think some of these larger scale projects are dedicating significant amounts of land to both the city and the county. Long Savannah would have the largest Charleston County park in all of Charleston County.
And I know you got to run to city council. You got your other work to do too. But let me ask you 3 more quick questions.
Okay.
What do you want the city of Charleston to partner on with the county in regards to what you just said to me?
Say that one more time.
Yeah, and what in regards to what you just said to me, what do you want the city to partner with the Charleston County government on?
Well, Lake Daughter.
Okay.
These land acquisitions in some of these storage areas. And ultimately, what I would love to see more than anything out there is for us to obtain some land near the circle, some of that area that's wet, and make a nice lake that has kind of a look of Colonial Lake, yes, where it can be a really nice area that can maybe do some drainage and storage, but also be aesthetically pleasing, maybe have people that can kayak on it, walk around it. We need to get some cool projects like that out there. And that's going to take intergovernmental agencies coming together and working as partners.
Now, with that small business loan, I guess, obviously, idea that you had in your mind, who should the city of Charleston partner on to make certain that these King Street businesses get back on their feet?
Honestly, what I would love to see us do as a city is I would love to see us partner with a minority bank.
Okay.
I've been talking about that. I've been in different workshops. I've been on listening sessions, and we've all talked about bringing a minority bank to Charleston. And it's in the works. We need to continue to push that idea. I would love to see that. And in terms of, I think the LDC has done some loans as well with the city, but I would love to see us partner up with a minority-owned bank. I really would.
And who would actually operate and own this?
Well, I think there's already, that concept's already out there. I believe there is a bank that's already out there that is minority owned, and they've looked at the Charleston area. I think they've partnered up with some people up in Columbia as well. So I think it's a South Carolina bank. I'm just still learning about it, but I'm going to be learning a lot more about it soon because I'd love to see us do something special like that.
And quickly, with those FEMA grants, how much is that in total for obviously the residents of your district?
So the retrofits are $30,000 each. So it'll be $120,000. Now, because these are small lots, that retrofit, we should be able to complete it within $30,000. So that'll be really nice. We'll be able to turn that into a nice little green space that holds some water. And, unfortunately, the people that own homes on those properties, they flooded out repeatedly. So we're going to take something that was a negative and we're going to turn it into a positive. And I'm really, really blessed that we're doing those kind of projects over in Church Creek and in District 10.
And how many houses are still flooded over that area as we speak here today?
As far as I'm concerned, that number's gone down significantly. If there is any, it's very, very few. And honestly, I'm working with the city every day to make sure that we don't have any houses flood in District 10.
Councilman Harry Griffin, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you for having me, Quintin. God bless you and have a great day.
Likewise.